So good to have you join us today. Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Lee in Seoul. Let's get started with a look at today's highlights. A latest report indicates that the trickle-down effects from Korean conglomerates to smaller companies are becoming less perceptible. We take you behind the scenes of this year's Mobile World Congress to look at what technologies grabbed people's attention the most this year. These stories and more coming right up. Korea's finance minister says the government will bolster its economic and diplomatic efforts to minimize the impact of China's economic retaliation against Seoul's deployment of the THAAD missile defense system. During an economy-related ministers' meeting on Wednesday, Yoo Il-ho said he is closely monitoring the impact on trade and financial markets and that the government will act swiftly and firmly to stabilize markets and support related industries if necessary. He went on to say that economic uncertainties have heightened due to sluggish domestic consumption and an anticipated U.S. rate hike. The government is also monitoring the potential impact THAAD may have on its agricultural exports, much of which are sent to China. The Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs said there are concerns that Chinese authorities could make the import of Korean food products harder by way of its customs and quarantine systems. According to Beijing's filings, authorities only rejected 6 Korean food product imports in January, which was down from the year before. But some local exporters have said they are being required to file more documents and to abide by tougher labeling rules. With crab fishing season just around the corner, the Korean Coast Guard has announced they will create a special patrol team to help identify and crack down on Chinese boats fishing illegally in Korean waters. The Coast Guard's Central Regional Headquarters said the newly formed team will patrol around 5 major West Sea islands, 백령도, 대청도, 소청도, 연평도, and 우도. The team includes 3 heavy patrol vessels, which are also equipped with 20 to 40 millimeter Vulcan cannons, as well as smaller-sized vessels that will also be equipped with firearms. The Coast Guard explained that while preservation of human life is a top priority, crews will defend themselves if attacked. Let's now get a quick check on how the markets fared here in Seoul today. At the closing bell, the benchmark Kospi closed up 0.06%, finishing the day at 2,095.41, while the tech-heavy Kosdaq ended lower by 0.05%. The Korean won closed the trading day stronger at 1,145.51 against the greenback. Korea's biggest player, Samsung Electronics, ended the day flat at 2,010,000 won per share after rising a full percent at the start of the session. U.S. stocks again ended lower on Tuesday as investors were in wait-and-see mode ahead of next week's Fed meeting. Pharmaceuticals tumbled after U.S. President Donald Trump promised to drive drug prices way down in a tweet. Over the decades, Korea has provided great support for family-controlled conglomerates, or chaebols, with the belief that their growth will eventually trickle down to small and mid-sized businesses. But a recent survey shows that this may no longer be the case. Our Lee Ju-young has more.
The influence of family-controlled conglomerates, or chaebols, is far-reaching in Korea. A reason why much of the responsibility of spurring job creation and driving up growth has lied with these firms over the decades. While that may have worked in the past, in this era of protracted low growth, there are questions as to whether this is an effective growth model. Take Hyundai Motor, for example. Korea Small Business Institute says for every 1% rise in Hyundai's sales, primary subcontractors saw a 0.43% rise in their sales. But when it came to the secondary and tertiary contractors, the benefits were hardly noticeable. The same applied to Samsung Electronics. Compared to the 0.56% rise in sales of the primary contractors, that of the secondary and tertiary contractors were drastically lower. The Business Institute says the overall trickle-down effect has dropped significantly compared to data from 2000. On the employment front, data from the Bank of Korea shows smaller companies created more jobs in 2013 for the same amount of production, with an employment inducement coefficient of 9.7 compared to large companies. This comes as conglomerates are increasingly expanding their production capabilities abroad, procuring raw materials locally. This, in turn, has resulted in weakened competitiveness of smaller companies. In fact, while the proportion of overseas production for conglomerates rose about 5 percentage points over the span of 5 years, that of SMEs inched up less than 1 percentage point. Experts say as creating a virtuous cycle through the growth of large companies has now reached its limit, a new structure with greater inclusiveness needs to be established. Lee Ju-young, Business Daily.
Many young Koreans say they're not considering getting married or having children because they don't think they can bear the paralyzing cost. This, as some argue that income disparity will need to be resolved if the low birth problem is to be fixed. Our Eunice Kim has this report.
This is a large maternity hospital in Seoul. The number of deliveries here over the past 5 years has dropped by about 30%, reflecting the nation's low birth rate, already the lowest among OECD nations. On the other hand, the proportion of new births by older mothers is climbing.
More than 30% of our deliveries are by mothers 35 years and up. We're also seeing women 42 years and older having babies, accounting for 5% of our new births.
For the country overall, mothers 35 years and older made up more than a quarter of all pregnancies. That's the highest on record, with the average age rising to 32.4 years. Pushing back marriage and pregnancies till later in life has been attributed to the trend of women prioritizing their careers. But the problem may be more fundamental than that. Many view the cost of growing up, from wedding planning and finding a decent home to planning for stable retirement, is simply unsurmountable.
It's not just childcare. It's difficult to get a house, so I'm reluctant to get married.
A widening wage gap is also playing its part in this sentiment. Examining people in their 20s and 30s when divided up by income level, those in the wealthiest 10% had an 8 in 10 chance of getting married. The lower their income level fell, the lower their chances of tying the knot. Those earning a wage in the bottom 10% had odds of less than 7%. Which is why some argue revising up the country's rock-bottom birth rate will need to mean raising the incomes of the middle and lower middle class.
Above all else, providing a fair wage and a stable job that people can build a future on is the most important.
The money the government has poured into birth rate-inducing policies like childcare and re-employment of women adds up to nearly $70 billion over the past decade. Perhaps a different, more difficult strategy is now called for, such as inducing quality jobs and shrinking income polarization in favor of shared growth. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
The Mobile World Congress 2017 wrapped up in Barcelona last week. Participants were able to get their hands on the latest technology, while industry leaders discussed what the next element in mobile technology might be. And our Kim Min-ji, who was covering the show, joins us in the studio today to give us a recap of this year's event and to tell us more about what went on behind the scenes. Hello, Min-ji.
Hi, Ji.
All right, so I imagine the venue was packed with tech enthusiasts.
That's right. The MWC has become one of the most awaited events for tech fans on their calendars. Now, the annual event is an arena for the world's tech giants to unveil their latest gadgets and services that incorporate state-of-the-art technology. This year, the event was attended by a record 108,000 visitors, an increase of 7% from the previous year, according to organizer GSMA. It hosted more than 2,300 exhibiting companies from both the mobile ecosystem and related industries, such as the automotive, finance, and healthcare sectors. The theme of this year's event was Mobile, the Next Element, and that could be anything from the Internet of Things to artificial intelligence or virtual reality, or all of them combined, creating a synergy that's basically designed to make our lives more convenient and smarter.
This year's MWC, we've been looking at the next element. And what does that mean? What do we mean by the next element? And mobile has permeated every part of our lives to the extent that it is basically elemental. So whether it's the generations of networks that are going forward, 5G, or the Internet of Things, it literally touches every part of our lives.
So what would you say would be most impressive technologies that grabbed people's attention this year?
Well, there was a heavy focus on ultra-fast 5G networks this year, which is a leap forward from the current 4G we have. It will still be a couple of years before it reaches the average household, but when it does, the impact is expected to be tremendous. The ITU, which is the UN Information and Communications Technology Agency, just ahead of the MWC, announced that for a network to be 5G, it must reach download speeds of up to 20 gigabytes per second. That would make it roughly 2,000 times faster than 4G. KT, Korea's telecom giant, is aiming to become one of the first providers of the service at the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics.
KT is aiming to provide a new viewer experience through the 5G network, such as 360-degree views and sync and omni views. 5G will provide ultra-fast speed, fewer delays and fast connection.
So I guess 5G is expected to enable a whole lot more than just a fast connection, as we just heard, diverse footage and also autonomous driving.
That's right. Another eye-catching feature at this year's MWC was autonomous driving, and SK Telecom showed off its T5, the world's first connected car running on a 5G network. Now, the T5 provides features that improve road safety and driving experience by ensuring ultra-low latency communication between vehicles and the vehicle and its environment. Now, SK is not the only one, though, from original automakers to even chip companies and tech firms. They're all jumping on the bandwagon.
We call it mobile network, can provide more information to the autonomous car or people drives car. They also can, doesn't matter who drives the car, you can get more information, so make it more safer. For example, one car maybe want to turn the left and another car maybe can get information.
Some had even set up booths for you to experience driverless cars. In fact, one of the perks of being at the MWC was getting to try things out for yourself. So from various sports, including boxing, table tennis, and gun shooting, to plane rides and roller coasters, it showed a future in which you may no longer need to go to the theme park or the gym.
All right, so talking about trying out things for yourself, I saw in your previous reports that you were on one of those rides. So tell us about what they were like.
The movements were very, very similar to the real thing. Because it's fast and turns 360 degrees, it does give you that bumpy experience. Now, a downside is that the graphics aren't so real, and down the line, it will need some artificial wind rushing through your hair for that finishing touch. Also, on top of that, VR devices will have to be well adjusted to people's heads, so they move smoothly along with the user when the roller coaster flips.
So what was your overall impression being at the heart of the action?
It was a great experience overall. I got to get my hands on some of the first smartphones unveiled to the world for the first time, such as LG Electronics G6 and Huawei's P10. But without the much anticipated Samsung's S8, it had launched much hype even before the show kicked off, and raising concerns that the industry is lacking the mobile innovation it had in the past. Also, it seemed that the focus on mobile technology had somewhat faded, with more attention being placed on AI, VR, or the Internet of Things, things we have seen in the previous run, which some experts say lacks differentiation from other tech shows like the CES.
And I think it's also a question of whether all this VR technology can actually be embedded into people's daily lives, because there are growing doubts that mainstream audiences are actually ready for all this.
That's right. Some experts do say, in fact, that the cycle in new developments may slow in the future, but they say as long as there's R&D investment, it's a trend that won't die down, because consumers will keep demanding faster and more immersive products.
All right, so I guess in the future, the event should try to provide more, mobile-related content to live up to its name.
That's right.
All right, thank you so much for coming in today.
No problem.
And that brings us to the end. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back tomorrow with more business news that matters to you. Until then, goodbye.